The world feels fractured, doesn't it? A pervasive unease seeps into our daily lives, a disquiet that whispers in the political arenas, echoes in our spiritual pursuits, and gnaws at the very core of our psyches. It's a feeling familiar, perhaps, like an old song half remembered. This disarray, this overwhelming surge of what feels like untamed elements, is not a random occurrence. Beneath the surface of our cultivated order, an ancient energy is stirring. It's the echo of a primordial truth, a cosmic secret whispered across millennia, that the very creation of our reality sprang from a boundless, formless expanse. This untamed force, this sacred disorder, resides not just in the distant past of myths, but hidden within the chambers of our own inner landscapes. We stand on a precipice where the familiar structures of our lives seem to tremble. This sense of impending upheaval, of forces gathering just beyond our sight, is a profound signal. It suggests that the very fabric of what we consider stable is intertwined with an older, more potent reality. To understand this moment we are living through, this collective tremor, we must look not to the surface gloss of modern life, but to the deep, ancient currents that gave it birth. This journey will not be about finding simple answers, but about embracing a profound understanding that chaos is not an enemy to be vanquished, but the very source from which all order, all life, and all meaning ultimately arise. We are about to embark on a descent, a brave exploration into the heart of what we have long sought to suppress. The modern affliction, this pervasive sense of fragmentation, is deeply rooted in our relationship with the untamed currents of existence. We push for order, for control, for a predictable narrative, often at the expense of acknowledging the wild, generative power from which we emerged. It's as if we've built towering edifices of logic and reason, only to find them cracking under the weight of an unseen, unacknowledged force gathering in the foundations. This isn't about a descent into nihilism or despair, but a courageous confrontation with the primordial soup of possibility. We have, in our quest for certainty, exiled a vital part of ourselves, a part that carries the echo of creation itself. This exile has profound psychological and spiritual consequences, manifesting as anxiety, a feeling of being adrift, and a profound disconnection from the vital energies that animate life. The chaos we perceive in the world is often a direct projection of the chaos we refuse to acknowledge within. And real quick, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos. Now let's keep going. Understanding this dynamic is the key to navigating the present moment. When we learn to recognize the signs that the maelstrom is returning, not as a force of destruction, but as a potent source of renewal, we can begin to engage with it, rather than fleeing from it. This is not merely an intellectual exercise, but an alchemical process, transforming our relationship with ourselves and the world around us. The journey into the depths of this archetype promises not an end to struggle, but a deeper, more meaningful engagement with life's inherent dynamism. The next step in this exploration will lead us to the very dawn of creation, to the primordial womb from which all existence bloomed. The universe, as we understand it, did not spring forth from a void of utter stillness, but from a vibrant, swirling expanse. Before the meticulous architecture of form and law, there was a dance of pure potential, a state of being beyond definition. Think of it not as emptiness, but as a boundless womb, pregnant with every possibility, every color, every sound that could ever be. This is where consciousness first stirred, not as a discrete entity, but as a seething, dynamic whole. This is the state that precedes the great separation, the moment when light distinguished itself from darkness and order began its intricate weaving. It is the fertile darkness from which consciousness, and indeed all of existence, eventually emerged. To deny this origin is to deny a fundamental truth about our own nature. We are not merely beings of logic and structure, but creatures born from this primal, generative source. This primordial womb, this sacred chaos, holds the blueprint for all that is and all that could be. It is the deep well of creative energy, the wellspring of transformation. When we lose touch with this source, we become brittle, disconnected, and sterile. our lives, our societies begin to mirror this disconnect, becoming rigid and afraid of the very forces that gave them birth. To truly understand ourselves and the world, we must return to this foundational understanding that our origins are not in a sterile vacuum, but in a dynamic, life-giving abyss. This recognition offers a profound pathway to reclaiming our own lost vitality and re-engaging with the creative pulse of existence. But where does this primal energy manifest most powerfully in ancient lore? We turn now to Mesopotamia's very first antagonist. In the ancient lands between the Tigris and Euphrates, where civilization first learned to write its stories, there existed a potent myth of creation. It spoke not of a benevolent father figure alone, but of a primal, saltwater chaos personified by a fearsome being named Tiamat. She was the cosmic mother, a creature of immense power, embodying the untamed, churning waters that existed before any land, any sky, any distinction. Tiamat was not simply evil, but a force of pure, unformed potential, a monstrous embodiment of the primordial sea. Her essence was the wild, unfettered nature of existence before it was carved into predictable shapes. The struggle to create the ordered cosmos in these ancient tales involved overcoming this initial, overwhelming force. It was an act of separation, of imposing structure upon the boundless. The dragon, the serpent, the monstrous queen of the deep she was, and in her very form, she represented that overwhelming, all-consuming aspect of existence that lies beyond our comprehension and control. The gods, in their wisdom, had to confront her, to divide her very being to forge the heavens and the earth. This epic struggle is not just a story of ancient cosmology, but a deep echo of our own internal battles. It hints at a powerful archetype, the dragon that guards the treasure, the abyss that beckons, the overwhelming mother. These are all facets of a profound archetype that continues to resonate within us, reminding us of the deep, dark waters from which our ordered reality was born. But how does this ancient myth connect with our modern understanding of the psyche? Carl Jung, peering into the depths of the human mind, encountered a similar vastness, an abyss that he called the unconscious. It was not a place of mere forgotten memories, but a realm of primal energies, archetypal forms, and the unformed potential that lies at the very root of our being. He spoke of confronting this darkness not as a descent into madness, but as a necessary process for wholeness. Within this unconscious lies the unformed, the embryonic state of consciousness and personality. It is a realm where the raw materials of our existence lie dormant, waiting to be shaped. For Jung, encountering this abyss wasn't an academic exercise, it was a deeply personal journey, a confrontation with the unknown within oneself. He understood that suppressing these primordial energies meant severing ourselves from our deepest source of power and creativity. This confronting of the abyss is a terrifying prospect for the ego, for it threatens the carefully constructed edifice of identity. It is the encounter with the chaos that existed before the self, the formless state from which all form arises. This is the psychic equivalent of Tiamat, the primordial sea from which our individual consciousness emerged. The raw power and formlessness found there are both the source of our greatest potential and our deepest fears. Our reluctance to engage with this inner abyss can lead to a profound sense of emptiness, a feeling that something vital has been lost. It is a state that forever beckons, a reminder of our origins and our ultimate potential for transformation. This ancient, potent force within us demands recognition. We often perceive the shadow as merely negative traits, a hidden well of our worst impulses, the darkness that we wish to keep concealed. But Jung's work revealed something far more complex. The shadow is not simply the repository of sin or shame, it is the repository of all that has been repressed, exiled, or left undeveloped. It is the unacknowledged part of ourselves, holding both our destructive urges and our potent, untamed gifts. Within this shadow lie not only our perceived flaws, but also our lost wholeness, our unexpressed creativity, our suppressed vitality. It is the home of the raw, primal energies that we have deemed unacceptable by our conscious ego. Think of it as a vast, uncharted territory within the psyche, brimming with treasures and terrors alike, the unintegrated aspects of our being. To only recognize the shadow as darkness is to profoundly misunderstand its power. It is the shadow that contains the raw, generative energy that we often mistake for destructive chaos. It is the unrefined gold, the potent seed, the untamed wildness that, when brought into consciousness, can lead to immense growth and transformation. Denying it only gives it a greater, uncontrolled power. When we refuse to integrate these neglected parts of ourselves, they don't disappear. Instead, they fester in the dark, exerting an influence from below, often manifesting as projection, irrational fears, or crippling anxieties in our conscious lives. The shadow isn't just a hidden flaw, it's a forgotten kingdom within, waiting for reclamation. This neglected kingdom holds a profound truth about the nature of disorder. The ancient Gnostic traditions, with their intricate cosmology, spoke of a divine realm, but also acknowledged a kind of sacred disorder, a pleroma teeming with divine emanations, not always neatly organized. They posited a creator god, but also spoke of lesser, sometimes flawed creators responsible for the material world, a world often seen as a prison, a place of divine scattering. This divine disorder wasn't necessarily about malevolence, but about a state of being that preceded perfect, crystalline order. It was an acknowledgement that the very source of existence, the divine spark, also contained within it the seeds of fragmentation and difference. It was within this inherent disorder that true spiritual possibility lay hidden, a spark of the divine trapped within the flawed creation. The Gnostics understood that by clinging too tightly to a notion of absolute static perfection, we risk missing the dynamic, emergent nature of the divine. True gnosis, or knowledge, involved recognizing the divine spark not just in the ordered heavens, but also in the messy, chaotic materiality of existence, and even within our own fractured selves. This perspective challenges our conventional notions of good and evil, of order and chaos. It suggests that the divine essence can be found even in what we perceive as disarray, that potential for profound realization lies not just in ascendance, but in descent into the unformed. It is a radical idea that speaks to the pervasive sense of unease we feel when order becomes too rigid. This notion of sacred disorder hints at why a certain kind of unease often surfaces in the quietest hours. When stillness descends, when the external world quiets its clamor, our internal landscapes often become more pronounced. The void, that vast, undefined space within us, begins to whisper. This is not an empty silence, but a resonant one, carrying the echoes of what we have suppressed or failed to integrate into our conscious lives. It is in the dark, in the absence of distraction, that these deeper currents surface. The night, historically and psychologically, has been a time associated with the unconscious, with dreams, and with the surfacing of primal energies. It is when the rigid structures of ego consciousness relax their grip, allowing the subtler, more potent forces of the psyche to make themselves known. This is not a time for superficial thought, but for a deeper communion with our hidden selves. The whispers are not random noises, they are messages from the unformed, from the chaos that lies at the root of our being. They speak of unmet needs, of repressed potentials, of the cosmic energies that demand acknowledgement. Our modern tendency to fill every moment with noise and distraction is a conscious avoidance of these whispers, a fear of what we might hear or what we might become if we truly listened. The void, when attended to, is not a terrifying emptiness, but a fertile ground for insight and transformation. It is the primal womb awaiting our return, offering the raw material for a more authentic existence. But the forces that champion rigid order often seek to silence this inner voice. This brings us to a powerful archetype of form and restriction. In the realm of myth and psyche, few archetypes embody the principle of form, structure, and restriction as profoundly as Saturn. This ancient deity, often depicted as a grim, elderly figure, represents the stern hand of law, the boundaries of time, and the inescapable gravity of consequence. He is the architect of our limitations, the enforcer of cosmic order, and the bringer of that inevitable sense of age and decay. Saturn's authority lies in its ability to carve boundaries, to define limits, and to impose a structure upon the boundless. He is the great limiter, ensuring that the raw potential of chaos does not overwhelm existence, but is channeled into predictable patterns. This is essential for the creation of stable reality, for without form, existence would remain an unmanifested dream. Yet his power also carries a darker side. When taken to extremes, Saturn's influence can manifest as rigidity, oppression, and a crushing fear of change. He can become the tyrannical father, stifling innovation and growth in his relentless pursuit of order and control. This is the force that demands conformity, that punishes deviation with harsh finality. The weight of Saturn's influence is deeply felt in our modern lives, in the bureaucracies, the rigid societal norms, and the internalized fears that prevent us from embracing the fluidity of life. He represents the necessary, yet often feared, authority of form that attempts to contain the wilder energies of existence. But what entity truly governs this imposed structure? At the heart of our experience, particularly in the modern world, lies a meticulously crafted trap of identity. This trap is not an external prison, but an internal construct, an elaborate edifice built by the ego. The ego, in its tireless effort to maintain a coherent sense of self, erects psychological barriers, categorizes experiences, and creates a narrative that defines who we are, and more importantly, who we are not. This ego architect works tirelessly, drawing on societal norms, past experiences, and internalized beliefs to build a fortress of identity. It seeks to control our perceptions, to filter reality through a lens of self-preservation and consistency. The trap lies in the illusion that this constructed self is the entirety of our being, that there is nothing beyond its carefully defined boundaries. The architect of the ego trap is driven by a deep-seated fear of dissolution, a primal terror of returning to the formless state from which it emerged. It craves stability, predictability, and control, and thus constructs a world that mirrors these desires. The success of the trap is measured by its ability to keep us contained within its walls, unaware of the vast inner wilderness that lies beyond. This self-imposed confinement, while offering initial comfort and a sense of belonging, ultimately leads to a profound form of spiritual poverty. It divorces us from the vibrant, chaotic energies that fuel true aliveness and transformation, leaving us feeling hollowed out and disconnected. The yearning for something more, for a deeper meaning, often stems from a subtle awareness of this confinement, this gilded cage. The persistent, gnawing feeling that something is not right, even in our most ordered lives, usually has a specific name. Beneath the surface of our curated existence, a potent current often surges: anxiety. It is the modern malaise, the pervasive unease that colors our days. But this anxiety is not a random affliction, nor a sign of personal failing. It is, rather, a message from the deep, a signal that we are out of alignment with fundamental truths of our being. It is the void whispering its presence at the edge of our awareness. Think of anxiety as the early warning system of the psyche. It arises when the rigid structures we have built around ourselves, our beliefs, our comfort zones, our carefully constructed identities, begin to chafe against the wild, untamed energies that are stirring within us and around us. It is the soul's signal that the ego's walls are too thin, too brittle, to contain the immensity of life. When we experience profound anxiety, it can be understood as a subconscious recognition of our exile from the primordial chaos, from the generative source of all existence. The terror we feel is the ego's desperate attempt to maintain its illusion of control in the face of an overwhelming, formless reality that it cannot categorize or contain. It is the soul crying out for authentic engagement. This message from the deep is not an invitation to panic, but a sacred summons to a deeper understanding. It urges us to look beyond the superficial, to recognize that true security does not lie in absolute control, but in a courageous embrace of life's inherent dynamism and mystery. The disquieting message of anxiety is often amplified by the larger forces that seek to manage human experience, even on a grand scale. In our modern era, there exists a pervasive impulse towards collectivized control, a societal engineering designed to manage and contain the unpredictable currents of human experience. This extends beyond mere governance, seeping into the way we are encouraged to think, feel, and behave. The underlying fear driving this collective impulse is a deep-seated dread of the abyss, of the untamed chaos that resides both within us and in the universe. This drive for predictability and sameness, for a sterile, predictable order, seeks to flatten the vibrant, often messy, spectrum of human consciousness. It aims to eliminate deviation, to smooth out the rough edges of individuality, and to ensure that no individual ventures too close to the edges of the unknown. The abyss, in this context, represents not just personal chaos, but the fear of collective disarray. When society prioritizes conformity and discourages authentic expression, it is essentially attempting to control the primal forces of creativity and intuition. This control, however, is a double-edged sword. By attempting to insulate ourselves from the fear of chaos, we inadvertently stifle the very energies that lead to growth, innovation, and genuine spiritual awakening. We become, in essence, prisoners of our own fear. This manufactured order, so often presented as safety, actually breeds a profound form of spiritual sterility and a subtle but pervasive sense of dread. It creates an environment where the whispers of the void are not only ignored but actively suppressed. Yet, within this very system of enforced order, a disruptive force often emerges, a force that embodies living with that very chaos. Within the rigid structures of imposed order, a peculiar and vital phenomenon arises: sacred madness. This is not the mindless descent into delusion, but a profound, often disruptive, awakening that occurs when an individual's consciousness breaks through the confines of conventional reality. It is the spirit's rebellion against a world that has become too small, too predictable, too deadening. This sacred madness is often embodied by the trickster figure, an archetype that delights in disrupting norms, challenging authority, and exposing the inherent absurdities of rigid systems. The trickster is not malicious, but is a necessary force of entropy, a catalyst for change who operates outside the established rules, often through wit, illusion, and sheer unpredictability. They are the jesters who speak truth to kings, the anarchists of the psyche. When an individual experiences this kind of break from reality, it can be terrifying, isolating, even seen as a curse. But from a deeper perspective, it is an invitation, and sometimes a forceful shove, towards a more authentic existence. It is the soul's desperate attempt to reclaim its lost wildness, to reconnect with the primal energies that have been suppressed by societal conditioning. This interruption by the trickster archetype forces a confrontation with uncomfortable truths. It reveals the fragility of our perceived order and the often arbitrary nature of the rules we live by. It is a powerful reminder that true vitality often lies just beyond the boundaries of what is considered sensible or sane. This disruption hints at a deeper, transformative process, even within destruction itself. In the ancient art of alchemy, the transformative process was often understood through distinct stages, and one of the most crucial, yet often misunderstood, was destruction. This was not viewed as mere annihilation, but as a necessary precursor to rebirth. The alchemists understood that to create the philosopher's stone, to transmute base metals into gold, the original substance had to be broken down, deconstructed, and reduced to its most elemental components. This stage, often referred to as the nigredo or blackening, involved dissolving, burning, or otherwise reducing the starting material to a primal, chaotic state. It was a period of decay, of putrefaction, where all semblance of the original form was lost. It was a deliberate descent into darkness and disintegration. Only by embracing this destruction, this loss of the familiar, could the potential for radical transformation be unlocked. This ancient alchemical principle mirrors the psychological and spiritual processes we undergo. When we face our own shadow, when we confront the chaotic elements within ourselves, we are engaging in a form of psychological destruction. We are dismantling old, limiting beliefs and structures that no longer serve us, paving the way for a new, more integrated self to emerge. The fear of destruction is deeply ingrained in us, but this alchemical perspective reveals it as a vital, creative force. It is the necessary crucible through which true transformation occurs. Without this willingness to let go of the old, to break down what is no longer viable, we remain stagnant, unable to achieve a higher state of being. This destructive phase often has a powerful cosmic parallel in ancient myth. Across various mythologies, a recurring motif emerges: the night serpent, the embodiment of primordial chaos that seeks to unmake creation. In ancient Egypt, this was Apophis, a colossal serpent who perpetually threatened to devour the sun god Ra as he navigated the underworld each night. His existence was dedicated to bringing about an end, a return to the primordial darkness and formlessness. Apophis represented the ever-present possibility of dissolution, the entropic force that constantly labors to undo the order that has been established. The daily struggle of Ra was not about vanquishing Apophis permanently, for such an entity, representing the primal void, cannot be truly destroyed, but about holding it at bay, about maintaining the precarious balance of existence through the cycle of renewal and assertion of order. This ancient serpent embodies the fear of annihilation, the deep-seated anxiety that the structured world we inhabit could, at any moment, be swallowed by the formless. It is a potent symbol of the chaos that lies just beyond the veil of our perceived reality, always waiting for an opportunity to reassert its dominion, to return everything to its elemental state. This ancient fear finds a chilling resonance in our present. The archetypal presence of the night serpent, of Apophis and his kin, is not confined to ancient texts. It manifests palpably in the modern fragmentation we witness all around us, in the political polarization, the social disintegration, the psychological anxieties that plague individuals and societies alike. The world feels increasingly fractured, as if the very bonds holding it together are fraying. This fragmentation can be seen as the outward projection of our collective refusal to engage with the primordial chaos. When we deny or repress the wild, untamed energies within ourselves, they don't disappear. Instead, they find expression in the external world as division, conflict, and a pervasive sense of unease. We are, in essence, projecting our inner schisms onto the external landscape. The feeling of being overwhelmed, of witnessing an unstoppable unraveling, mirrors the ancient struggle against the serpent of chaos. We see the forces of disorder not as a potential source of renewal, but as an existential threat that seeks to dismantle everything we hold dear. This perception drives further attempts to impose rigid control, further entrenching the cycle of division. This archetype whispers a constant warning that a world built solely on suppressing chaos is inherently unstable. True resilience comes not from eradication, but from integration. But what does this integration look like, and where can we find its reflection? It can be found in the subconscious realm, in the very fabric of our sleeping minds. The preordered world of our dreams offers a profound glimpse into the primal state of being, a realm that precedes conscious categorization and rational organization. In this state, the archetypal energies manifest in their rawest forms, unfiltered by the ego's constant need for coherence. Dreams speak a language of symbols, emotions, and primordial imagery that bypasses the rational mind. Here, the dragon of chaos might not be an antagonist to be slain, but a powerful, ambivalent force to be understood. The formless void may not inspire dread, but a sense of boundless possibility. This realm is where the raw material of consciousness resides, where the seeds of our deepest potentials are sown and nurtured, unburdened by the strictures of waking logic. When we dismiss dreams as mere random neural firings, we ignore a vital pathway to understanding the chaos that underpins our reality. We miss the opportunity to commune with the unformed aspects of ourselves, to receive messages from the liminal spaces where creation and dissolution dance together. This is a space where the symbolic language of the universe speaks directly to our souls. The nightly journey into this dreamscape is a return to a state of primordial awareness, a reminder of our connection to the vast, unfathomable currents that flow beneath the surface of our ordered lives. It is a vital encounter with the raw, potent energies that have been largely exiled from our conscious experience. But how do we truly see ourselves in this reflection? The mirror of the unformed self is a potent and often disquieting reflection. It is not the polished surface that shows us our familiar face, the one we have carefully constructed and presented to the world. Instead, it is a deeper, more fluid mirror, one that reveals the raw, potential self that lies beneath the layers of identity and experience. It is the place where we meet our own formlessness. In this mirror, we see not a fixed personality, but the dynamic interplay of archetypal energies, the echoes of primordial chaos, and the nascent forms of what we could become. It is a confrontation with the parts of ourselves that have been left undeveloped, unacknowledged, or even feared. This is where the shadow lands, not as a place of judgment, but as a reservoir of unexpressed life. To gaze into this mirror is to step outside the comfortable confines of the ego's definition. It demands a willingness to surrender the illusion of a solid, unchanging self, and to embrace the fluid, ever-changing nature of our being. It is in this confrontation with the unformed that we begin to understand the true depth and complexity of our inner landscape. This recognition calls us to a profound act of remembering. This journey has led us through the ancient myths, the depths of the psyche, and the very essence of creation. We have seen how the archetype of chaos, not as mere destruction, but as sacred disorder, underpins our reality and our very being. We have understood how its repression leads to suffering and fragmentation, and how its integration is the key to wholeness. Now, the final step is to descend, to remember the primordial silence from which all emerged. This descent is not into oblivion, but into the profound stillness where true knowing resides. And real quick, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos. Now let's keep going.